And we are live.
We are
Happy
live
Thursday.
in the world.
Nah,
How are
man,
you
go
doing,
ahead.
Casey? No, go
I'm
ahead.
doing well. Doing well.
I am too. I'm at the Broker Carrier Summit. It's kind of set up here in the corner. So if you hear any background noise, that's the buzz from the conference. It's going great. I had a great first day, and sitting here, everyone's at lunch doing deals right now. The brokers and carriers are set up by mode, right? So you have the dry van people, you have flatbed people, you have the reefer people, and they're working out deals.
Wow. That's awesome. Seems like a great way to do it. Anyways, we got Liz Ward here this Thursday. She's got a trucking background as well. But yeah, joining us today from the ZBOX offices in, I think, the DC area. But anyways, Liz, it was so Ward Trucking, right? Is I guess part of the namesake and probably where you first started hearing a little bit about trucking. LTL,
Yeah.
right? Is that the kind of the core focus
LTL.
there?
Yeah.
Very
Yeah. So
cool.
my great grandfather started the company in 1931. So it's been in the blood, I guess you could say. My dad ran it whenever we were younger for 25 years. So we were exposed to trucking and all things LTL at a very young age. Um, like I look back in our dinner table conversations were a little bit different. In that so there's three siblings myself, and my dad would have like a conversation topic about the business that he would bring to dinner, and we're like kids, right? So he'd be like, hey guys, here's the situation at work today. We have like a unionized terminal doing this, we have like this going on. And so we would chime in like we were like this executive roundtable. But I yeah, so I attribute, a lot of my interest and just interest generally around business, around those conversations. And then but truthfully, guys, like I never thought I was going to be in this space. It didn't get very cool until those VC dollars poured in, and then there was so much that kind of unlocked when that happened. But it's one of the best spaces to be in. My brothers still work for the company. I had a hot stint at Ward. They probably were happy whenever I left. Maybe not, but I don't know.
Where do you fall in the hierarchy of siblings? Are you the youngest, the oldest, or?
So I have an older sister who's the smartest of the four because she has her own interior designer business in Wilmington, Delaware. And then me, and then my brothers, David and James. They're twins, and they work for the company right now.
Okay, so twin younger brothers.
Yeah, twin younger brothers, but huge. They're 6'6", like size 15 shoe, identical. No one knows where they came from.
That's too funny. That's too funny. I'm one of four as well, and my twin sister and I are the babies. We're twins as well. So
that's cool.
That's too funny. Had a similar kind of experience growing up. Hearing about the cool case studies from different trucking companies that my dad was going to visit at the time. Possible we even talked about Ward one day sitting around the dinner table, but no, it's very cool way to get the family together. And I guess you've been doing case studies on transportation and logistics since you could walk.
Yeah. It's a great space. And when I left Ward, I went more into the full truckload brokerage. And then my role here at ZBOX is kind of cool in that I get to see all parts of the supply chain, from the ports, the railroads, trucking, etc. But I miss the LTL. And so Curtis Garrett is hosting his his next, what is it, Understand LTL? Those like kind of quarterly summits he's doing. So the next one's going to be at ZBOX, but I'm really excited to kind of,
Very cool.
get back into it.
Put the LTL thinking cap back on. Kev, I put you on mute. I don't know if you have a question.
Yeah, I do. I do, because I was always a full truckload broker, and I didn't know anything about LTL. And the more people talk about LTL, the more I'd zone out, because it's just too complicated, right? It's like different worlds. So you've done a little bit of both. What are the major takeaways, the major key differences that you saw?
So, full truckloads, of course, a bit slower than LTL. And it's interesting because there's so much conversation around full truckload transport. It's like, how many ways can we slice this thing? And then you look at LTL and it's incredibly complicated. So when I was at Ward, I thought, I want to spend my time in the functions that, in my mind, I thought really move the needle. Assuming you have a solid operation and you're competitive. We'll just say competitive. I always thought marketing and pricing were like two ways to really accelerate your growth and kind of differentiate yourself from a carrier perspective. So the pricing, Kevin, to answer your question, that is the difference. It's so complicated. It probably doesn't need to be complicated, but it's certainly not like an FTL, rate. We'll do DAP plus whatever.
I remember Zorlite 92, Zorlite 96, and all these different combinations of it, and
the accessorials,
it was accessorials, right? And how do you even? It's a Zorlite thing. I remember just being in a conversation one time. Zorlite 60, Zorlite 94, but it is some kind of pricing on top of that, like 3-year-old pricing on a Zorlite 94. And I'm just like, I'm just lost.
That was such a good experience for me, because you realize how much, of course, is baked in to the formula, but also kind of how much you're being shopped around by all the brokers at any given moment. And it's like, it's really hard to plan on the volume, and it's hard to plan, like predict the new business you could potentially be getting, because it's just so random that I just felt like a rate monkey, like just crunching the rates in some conference room all day long. And that whenever I would do ride-alongs with like a sales leader, I'd kind of be like a little angry, and I was younger too, but I would go into all these brokers and be like, hey, I remember your bid so clearly. Where's the volume? You said it was on this lane. And these people are like, oh my God, but it's hard for an LTL carrier. There's so much, you're dealing with. And then the driver perspective, that was also really fascinating. If you guys ever have a chance to do a ride along with an LTL driver, do it, because you'll learn so much about just the day-to-day and all of the maneuvering, from not even just driving an 18-wheeler, but, pulling into these really small yards, not even yards, parking lots, the customer service part too, where you're like going through all this headache just to get there. And then you got to be nice to them, and sometimes you got to wait for the freight and then on to the next one. It's like this scene out of The Amazing Race. It's wild.
Absolutely.
I can't wait.
It's madness. But anyways, it's cool that you were able to make the jump, from the family business. And like, there's other modes of transportation, which is, hard to understand. You can lose the forest for the trees in trucking, but you made the jump to ZBOX, right? Which I think is, would you say founded by CGM, right? A container shipping line. But would love to kind of hear more about how you, what kind of inspired you to make the jump, and what you guys are up to there at ZBOX.
Yeah. So I think for me, at Ward, when I was there, I found that there was like so much wrapped around the identity of the last name. Where when your last name's on the side of the truck, you know, people are kind of keep you at arm's distance a little bit. When you really want to like get into the business and understand it, I found like that was a little hard to a degree, and I understand like why that would be for people, but I felt like I wasn't able to like, really learn, and I was very curious about the space. And I also thought there was like a lot in my tank that I wanted to see what I could do on my own, just as Liz. And I was really fortunate in that when I was working at Ward, kind of thinking through my next steps, thinking like, how would I ever even get out of here? Like, what would that even look like? Like, I would just be starting from the ground up kind of thing. And it's not like I had a crazy role at Ward. I was always kind of starting from the ground up. But that was whenever Dan Lewis, this is back whenever LinkedIn was actually kind of a manageable inbox, and you got every now and then you get a little ping. You're like, oh, what's this note, But Dan reached out to me and he's like, hey, I'm starting this like incredible brokerage, using technology. Like, I would like to talk to you. And again, I have my broker hat on after being in the pricing conference room, and I'm like, all right, here we go, another broker. But that I think was such an unlock for me from a network perspective, learning all about product and engineering in the role automation like plays and can play in all of these operations. And so that really kind of got my wheels turning in a different way. That was different than the asset-based carrier mindset, of which is incredibly hard. Like still to this day, I think that's the hardest role to operate in. But that was really a blessing for me. And so I joined Convoy. I worked there for several years, or not several years. It was kind of quick. It was like a year and a half.
Right.
And then moved to Transfix, just, let the bleeding continue kind of thing. No, both were good experiences. But then after that, I was so burnt out on like all things truckload brokerage, all the DFM, nonsense. And so I just started consulting on my own, picked up some clients. And then that's when Charlie Dehoney, who was, I know on your podcast recently, reached out to me about ZBOX. So ZBOX is kind of like this third party innovation arm that we're building not only for CMA. You're right, Casey. CMA is our parent company. And the idea came from Rudolph Sade, who's the chairman, CEO of CMA. But we are also kind of offering a similar capability to other companies.
Okay.
Yeah, and Charlie, I was actually talking to Charlie about 5 minutes ago, or 10 minutes ago.
Oh my God.
We jumped on. Yeah, he's out here running around the Broker Carrier Summit today.
Naturally. Yeah. Charlie was great. When we both were working at ZBOX, our first year, so our business model is basically we get our revenue through corporations. So we'll work with railroads, ports, of course, CMA, SEVA. But the idea is we go into these organizations and we try to amass as many problems as we possibly can. So early on, it was Charlie and I, like going around the US, talking to anyone in these corporations that we could. First, we started, our thesis at first was like, we want to solve supply chain problems. That's it. COVID was such a disaster. We're solving all supply chain problems. There's so many startups. Let's match them. And then when we got into it, we were like, damn, I don't know if startups are really the right companies for these massive supply chain problems, because they're very big. And the second anything goes wrong, it's like, ugh, So we had to really like kind of retool. And then we opened it up to just like anyone who would want to talk to us. So HR, finance, sales, marketing, all of these other functions, and amassing their problems too. And that was really helpful because we've found that the most success we've had has been connecting functions that are not core to the operation with startups. It's more of like a point solution.
Interesting. Very interesting. And like, I guess it kind of makes sense, right? Having come from Convoy and Transfix with the DFM background, maybe drilling down into more specific problems, more specific solutions instead of trying to boil the ocean is the way to, I guess, get the transportation, logistics, and supply chain industries to the 21st century. Is that kind of the thought process?
Yeah, every company is a little bit different in their appetite towards innovating, right? That's another thing I'm learning is that, the culture of a company and the willingness is like huge. Like you have to have leaders that inside the organization that really see the potential or the value. Otherwise, like it's just a waste of your time. Like that is number one. But
Right.
But we've seen, there's so many supply chain startups, and much of this is, goes back to I call it the 2021 gold rush, 2020 gold rush, where there's just so much money poured into this space.
Right.
And so, you have like a supply and demand kind of imbalance right now, where the supply side are all these companies that of course want money and revenue and customers. And then on the corporate side, it just there's not enough homes for all of those companies. Right.
Right.
But yeah, we've seen the biggest success with like these really great point solutions. Maybe it's a company who I was on a call earlier. We were talking about the increase of spot rates for containers. And so, one problem set that's recently come up is people are using our self-service platform, which is great, but we don't have a way of like vetting them. And so they book space in the container, but then sometimes it turns out they're a nefarious company and we kind of get burned and that we're having trouble collecting money. So that's a great example of how do we insert or how do we find a startup that is focused just on the compliance, the monitoring, and that's a great application for that company.
Right. It's interesting.
Right? Less of companies that are like, we do the whole thing. Like we'll be your control tower, we'll manage everything. And maybe they have great software, but it's tough to do that.
It is very tough to do that. It's interesting. You mentioned the gold rush of 2021, 2022, with all this outside capital coming into the industry. And it seems like there were a lot of, companies that were promising, right, that said that they could manage everything and solve all your problems for you. But it's interesting, now it seems like, certainly sounds like ZBOX is taking this approach. I know other, capital in the space is, taking this approach of going to, solving more specific problems. And it's cool, right? Because this kind of second wave of freight tech is backed by like smart money, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. Like, yep. People that have, tried and probably learned some awesome lessons from the first wave.
Yeah. I love that. Like it's more of a lesson learned. In that there's not a ton of like movement happening right now, certainly not compared to the gold rush, right? But I think it's A-okay in that many new investors that enter the space, they're getting smarter and smarter. And I think also VCs are starting to really get focused on particular verticals and going very deep inside them. And that only helps too, everything. The quality of the deals they're investing in, the quality of the companies that are now kind of in the market. Like that will really be poised as an industry to do a lot of amazing things, the second the economy turns around, hopefully interest rates keep going down, it's easier to borrow some money.
Amen.
But yeah,
Great.
right. Yeah, I know. It's been a bit like of a blah year for most people, most companies. It's not bad. It's not amazing, but it's just kind of like blah.
Wait and see.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Mm.
One of the things that I was hearing last week at Technovations is, as people are waiting for things to turn around here, history is any indication, inevitably turn around. People are going back and looking at their tech stacks, figuring out
Yeah.
what tech am I actually using, right? What am I getting an ROI on? A lot of the tech seems to have been implemented during the gold rush quickly, right? People were
Mhm.
growing their businesses and maybe didn't do as much due diligence or spend as much time implementing the new technology to get the most out of it. So it seems like, folks are reconsidering their positioning, for this bull market that maybe here, maybe not here, but, hopefully certainly around the corner. It's interesting. I would love to hear from you. And I came across, I hadn't seen your name probably since I saw you speak at the FreightWaves conference, I think maybe a year or two ago. But I think you were on stage with Glenn Youngkin, Winsome Sears, and
Yeah.
one of my favorite founders in the space, Ryan Joyce, was speaking. Very cool company, thinking about things a little bit differently. But, we'd love to learn a little bit more about like what companies you guys are excited about, what kind of technologies, and I don't know if it's there's enough room in this question for it, but would love to hear a little bit more about, how you guys are involved with the state of Virginia.
Yeah. So the state of Virginia, that was such a cool opportunity that really fell into our lap. So back in August, I get an email from Governor Youngkin's team, and they're like, "Hey, we want to throw we want to celebrate this big milestone, achieving this big milestone at ZBOX." And I honestly thought it was like a spam email. Like I remember talking to my coworkers and I was like, guys, you're not gonna believe the email I just got. Like someone this is like spam at the next level, And it turns out they wanted to host it at ZBox, which we were so grateful. But they've invested a ton of money into really nurturing their startup environment. Yeah, it's great. Perfect. So Governor Youngkin's first day in office, he made this pledge that he was going to, make sure that there was 10,000 new startups created in the state of Virginia. And he has such an amazing background for this, being, the CEO of the Carlyle Group, and really was able to speak from the heart to all of these founders. So that was an amazing opportunity. And next week, Secretary Merrick is coming by the office. We're going to explore some opportunities for to potentially do work with each other. But I think this is frankly the first time I've ever seen a state really be so dynamic in wanting to make sure that they're investing in a thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem and having that be a key pillar of their strategy. Another, I guess the only other example would be Alliance, Texas, and all the things that, Perot's doing down there. That's another, I had a chance to go visit them in the spring and really blown away by all the great stuff that's happening in Alliance in the Fort Worth area.
Nice.
Yeah. So there's a move towards, I don't know what you call it, but there's a move towards more of this local grassroots, not grassroots, but more of this local kind of nurturing of entrepreneurial talent at the local level.
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't know. I mean, from the outside looking in, it seems like a massive opportunity. It was mind blowing to me when I saw Tesla move from California to Texas.
Right.
it seems like it's harder and harder for companies to do business on the coasts. Maybe not Virginia, it sounds like, right? It's cool to see that there's states out there investing in businesses. A lot of like the really big companies on the publicly traded stock exchanges have gotten very, very big, and it's really hard for people to get to play with the big boys these days because it's such an insulated group, it seems like.
Right.
I think if you look back at the stock market 20, 30, 40 years ago, there were 5-10 times as many small cap stocks being traded. So it's really cool that there are folks like Virginia. And I mean, 10,000 startups, like that's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And very cool.
And there's a lot of incentives too for companies to relocate to the state of Virginia. But it's a smart like business model, like they're doing incentives for corporations like Legos, for instance, recently relocated to Virginia. Boeing's down the street from us. And then have that coupled with the startup, the underbelly of the startups and making sure they're incentivized to grow. It all of a sudden creates this really thriving ecosystem.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I know that you guys are working with companies from all different walks of life these days. And welcome back, Kev. Good to see you. Who are the folks in the
things happen, right? For some reason everything crashed.
No worries. We were just talking about you the whole time. No,
I'm sure of horrible things.
No worries. Of course not. But anyways, I was just asking Liz, who are her, favorite companies in freight tech these days? Are there any? We've got AI on the horizon. Seems like cyber security and fraud prevention are like super duper hot topics these days. Communication is one that's super hot, but we'd love to hear from you, Liz. What are you guys excited about there at ZBOX? What are the folks in other offices working on?
So we're excited about anything our corporate partners are excited about, and these are, when you think about that question, like a lot of people ask me this, they're like, what do you like in tech now? And it's such a broad, question. And so I like to answer it in two different ways. One is there's stuff that just genuinely inspires you, where you're like, wow, that is fascinating. I can't believe that even exists. And then the second way is like what works. What companies are solving problems and they're getting that reception from the buyer, the corporate, that what they're doing is good, right? So from a inspiring perspective, I mean, I think the humanoid stuff is so interesting. I don't know if you guys saw Elon Musk a few weeks ago. He unveiled this big announcement in Beverly Hills. I don't know if you guys saw any of those videos, but
Sure.
That is wild, right? Yeah.
It is wild. It really is wild. So I watched the videos and things. Are those right around the corner for blue collar jobs, or I mean, I don't know. Warehousing, picking.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Not yet. I mean, we underestimate how powerful the human brain is. And Kevin, that's an interesting topic right now. As you think about the change management associated with all of this. I think I had said this before. I was at the Virginia Maritime Association conference a couple weeks ago. And of course, there's a huge issue with the ILA right now and anything automation, anything AI. I talked to someone yesterday that works in a communications role, and we were talking about AI, and she's like, I love ChatGPT, but I'm also thinking, what happens to my job? So there's this visceral reaction you get from people on these things, but I think it's like autonomous trucking. Like you need some sort of thing to create the conversation, to spark interest in that direction, but it's going to take a while to get there. Right?
For sure.
As you think about just our human, how we move as a human, all the programming, involved just with that, then you think about how we're able to, think quickly react quickly. Like there's just a lot that needs to be sorted through, but it still is really cool to think about something being able to like do your dishes one day.
For sure. I don't know. Maybe they can
It is, it was, he claimed, or he had it priced at $20,000 for for one of the robots. And I mean, to do your household chores for years, that's a pretty good deal.
It's a great deal. Yeah. Fantastic.
Reminds me of the Jetsons.
Yeah, it does. It really does. But the topic though, I think we have to get back to exactly what you said, Kevin. Like, what can it do for me? Like, how can I still be in control and have the power, right, as a human? So, like, what can these robots do for me? And I think that the conversation quickly goes to, oh my God, they're taking over me. And so it's a mindset shift, right? Of like, how can I leverage this? Because the reality in the supply chain, there is so much like, dull, dirty, dangerous work out there that no one wants to get into, certainly not the younger generation.
Right. Absolutely. It's crazy too, to go back to the Elon thing, right? I mean, he releases the robot and then he catches a robot in the same week and releases the new taxi. Seems like things are accelerating pretty rapidly. One thing I do want to pick on that you dropped earlier, Liz, was, like, what do the corporate partners care about as being a criteria for, a startup that you guys are excited about? That makes a lot of sense, right? So you got to find your startup. I heard a brilliant founder recently tell me, you got to get adoption from the enterprise first, right? If you can find a fit at a large organization, it's a lot easier to evangelize your solution from top down, as opposed to maybe working with the small folks first and trying to work your way to the top. Easier said than done, right? How do you develop relationships with the corporations and have the knowledge, expertise to solve them?
Well, that's a big thing, Casey, having the knowledge, expertise, building a company because you want to solve a problem, and not the other way around, not building a company and trying to find the problem afterwards, which we see that a lot, where companies come in, they're like, well, we've done this thing for Meta, and so why wouldn't it work for, a railroad? And you're like, okay, you need to come back whenever you've done your research on this. Right. And that goes a long way. But yeah. But for us, we organize our business in 4 kind of different verticals, and this reflects all the problems that we see. So it was like operational efficiency, decarbonization. It's a popular one. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to, the electrification, all the energy stuff with the election coming up here too. But the third is all the back office automation. And the fourth is the future of work. It's like how you work with your employees, your customers, safety, et cetera. But the workflow automation, this is probably the most popular right now. And it could be anything from, I want to find a great way to like reconcile my invoicing, my billing to, I want to create my own chat GPT, for my company. And so there's a lot of like great ideation happening inside these organizations of like what could be possible with AI, right? Of like what other things in our business could we automate or could we improve? But what we're finding is that there's kind of there's an issue with the data infrastructure. Not many companies are really poised to like harness it today. Like the data is not clean, it's not in one space. There's anomalies that like you can't detect. Yeah.
It all does seem to come back to that problem.
How about using AI to clean up your data? I mean, is that something that the companies are looking into, or is that possible?
Yeah, there's a company called, I believe it's Zero Error, and they're doing just that. And I think that's a really great stepping stone. Like as you think about the autonomous trucking, how we're thinking about more of a piecemeal type of approach,
Right.
from semi-autonomous to, retrofitting assets to make them semi-autonomous. And then it's like this gradual kind of buildup. I think that's a perfect, like, Kevin, that's a great point. And that it's a roadmap, that you have to kind of be building towards, but the infrastructure component is really, really big. In that, you don't want to lose the momentum of what can be possible and what it can do to an organization, but you also kind of like need to be realistic with what's possible.
For sure. It's funny. I got my start in the real kind of corporate world working for the Blockchain and Transportation Alliance.
Oh yeah, the beta.
Yeah, exactly.
Patrick Duffy used to work at ZBOX PD.
That's right, Patrick. Still a good buddy of mine. It's funny. He used to. I just moved to Jacksonville, where my girlfriend lives, and he grew up here in Jacksonville. I was texting him the other day, and he's like, "Where are you living?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm off of Hodges near the Windsor Park golf course."
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're kidding me. Me and my brother used to walk that thing barefoot, after
Oh
school.
my gosh. He's the best guy, best dinner guest I've ever had.
Oh my gosh. He can talk about anything.
Anything.
He's a great dinner guest. He really is. Yeah, he's probably listening right now.
He probably is. We should have him come in. Yeah, no, but so you're saying though, Casey, you were working at BITA.
Yeah, I was working at BITA. Patrick was there. People were thinking blockchain may be the technology that solves the data problem, interoperability problem. AI is cool, but like if AI doesn't have your data used to train the LLM, or like if you're just like spitting your data into chat GPT, like it doesn't work that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to train the LLM with the data. I don't know. Is blockchain having or Web3, any kind of technologies in that space? You haven't heard a lick of it, have you?
No. And, there's some companies that try to phrase it differently.
Yeah.
But it's such a big undertaking that will require not only the data to be there, but also a lot of trust along the way. And that's something our industry is not the best at, is trust.
My data.
It's riddled with all this ego, and
that is an understatement of the year.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it still exists. Like I was last week, I was at a dinner, and of course, I'm the only female there, which is quite normal. But it still is like the good old boys is alive. They were alive and well, if not growing. New members added every day, and you're like, oh my god.
Right.
So we have a lot of like behavioral stuff. I think as an industry, we need to like get to the root of before we even think about blockchain having a real impact.
For sure. And then there's Michael Darden, of course, talking standards. Standards would be great.
Yeah.
But
And Lance Healy as well. Good old Lance.
Yeah, I love Lance.
Yeah.
Same. He's so interesting, and he's one of these like true entrepreneurs that's just constantly noodling over stuff. And he's a really great guy. Yeah, he's done a lot of good. Actually, I'll see him at the LTL event here in a couple weeks, hopefully. Yeah, so looking forward to that. But
sure, we had Todd Hazelhorst on, I guess, a couple of months ago. Is Lance Healy? Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah.
Is he associated with Healy Labs as well? Or is he?
I don't know.
He is. I don't think he is. I mean, he's got his own company. It's a great title that I can't think of at the moment. Don't kill me, Lance. But still there. Shoot us the name. But yeah.
What is this? I'm gonna Google it.
I know. Is that it?
I think it's.
What is it? Freight Facts.
Freight Facts. I got you, Lance.
Freight Facts. Yes. Freight Facts.
Yeah. Lance is chiming in right now, being like, "What the heck?" Yeah. But what about you guys? I always love asking this question to other folks who, are dialed into more or different segments a bit more. But what kind of tech do you like? What companies? Oh my God, Lance. Is he chiming in right now?
He is.
Yeah, what do you like though? What's the buzz?
Kev, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll say that I've kind of died. I just ignored AI for the longest time.
Yeah.
And now I've kind of dived into it, and I'm using it in certain spots. I think the reason why I ignored it is because AI is just abstract. That's great. What use cases is there for it? And I'm starting to use it in spots right now, and I'm just fascinated by it. Being able to do certain tasks. So I make some phone calls with AI, write some research calls. The voice assistants are pretty good, certainly for simple tasks that I do. So they work really well. Now, once you get complicated, more complex conversations or tasks, I'm not sure how to do that yet, but I'm more interested in finding out how to do that, how to do the prompts and things like that. Yeah, and also data analysis, right? Where I go in and do 100 different things to a spreadsheet to get it set up and produce what I want. I'd rather just tell someone else to do it, and I'm finding that I can do that with AI, and it makes much fewer mistakes than I do during that process, because I'm doing something that I have to go back and redo it because I thought about this, or I typed in something wrong. But being able to do data cleansing, data analysis, and a few voice and email type kind of tasks are very
helpful,
very interesting to me now.
Yeah.
For sure. Kev, you use Happy Robot, right?
I do, yes.
Happy Robot's a cool one that I saw last week. We spoke with Paul Singer earlier, who's got a company called Fleetworks AI. I was actually introduced to him by Patrick Duffy. Those type of solutions are really cool, I think, right? Because brokers now are trying to figure, they know the margins aren't going back to what they were in 2021, 2022. How do I figure out how to, increase my revenue without increasing my headcount? it seems like tools like that really make it a lot easier for, you know, the carrier to get the load that they are qualified for. It makes it easier for the broker to sift through the 10, 15, 20, 30 carriers that may be calling on a load and figure out how to prioritize and execute, right? Like move on to the next thing, or, you know, servicing the loads that are running that day, or, you know, trying to figure out how to solve more problems for your customer and get some more freight. There's other cool things out there. You know, our man Dhruv Gupta, who we had on the show a while back as well at Drum Kit, they won the Shark Tank Award and the Technovation, you know, like People's Choice Award last week. They're doing inbox automation, right? So they're taking all of the data entry, all of the manual stuff that like people have to hate to do, and it's just like, let's just surface the decision making opportunities where, you know, we need the human in the loop as many times as possible, so that, you know, they can spend their time doing things that, you know, make them feel good and help grow the business, right? It's interesting you mentioned like the good old boys club is still intact.
It's still in town.
You're probably like absolutely right. I've been thinking, what is the difference? Like how do you grow a massive brokerage, right? Kevin Nolan sat on stage and he didn't show up for, you know, rehearsals or anything like that, which probably wouldn't surprise anybody if they know Kevin. But, you know, he sat down on stage and, you know, introduced himself and the problem. He's like, great brokers know how to utilize technology. They're not necessarily great at building it. And that's how he kind of set the stage for these demos from, you know, Queued, which is another great one, I think, solving a very specific scheduling problem. It's like, and they've got, I think I have the sticky notes somewhere around here, but it's a great marketing tactic as well. Solving a problem, I think, is one piece of it, but then like helping your customers understand how it makes their life easier and frees up time to go solve other problems, dumbing it down. There's like a lot of this tech is super duper technical, right? And as much as, you know, we as logisticians like to think we're also technologists, we're not, and it's hard to understand some of this stuff coming down the pike, right? So I think it's the founders of these companies to figure out how to take this super complex problem that they're solving and boil it down into a way that's digestible, and to kind of like I think the answer to like what makes a great brokerage, it's the culture, right? Like having the management team and the vision, the ability to figure out what technology is great, implementing that, but like having the right people that can think on their feet and solve those problems like immediately in a split second is, I think, what separates, you know, good from great brokerages. You know, there's one out there that is a privately held brokerage based in Tennessee, and like I couldn't believe the number that I heard that they had grown to. But when I heard where they're hiring people from and how they think about building that culture, it made a lot more sense. I did an interview at Arrive Logistics way back in the day, and, you know, they give their, you know, new folks a Wonderlic test, which is the same test the NFL used to give to draft prospects. I think they still do. There's some new test that's, I don't know what it is. It's kind of funny to talk about during that time of year, but, you know, some way to like grade the aptitude on these people. Maybe they don't have the experience, but like, I know this person can think, and I know that because of the culture we have here at this company, they can learn and we can make them who they need to become to be successful here. And that's how you get from $1 million to $1 billion, is my hunch anyways.
Yeah. Kevin, were you going to say something? I feel like
it goes back to, you know, AI is very broad. Other technologies are very broad, but they're not really a use case or a business case. They're tools for that solution for whether it be invoicing and accounting, what Charlie's working on, or appointment scheduling, what Qt is working on, Broad, which is highways thing. AI tools and AI technology can be inserted in that to make those better, right? Make those easier and cleaner. But I think a lot of the tech companies they lead with very broad, abstract, great, cool technology.
Yeah.
How do I actually apply this on a day-to-day basis? And that's solving specific problems that I think is what a lot of print tech firms should focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. But the encouraging thing is it if you look at the last year or so, post pandemic, where volumes have just more or less kind of flattened, you haven't seen like the margin compression that you would see in these weak times, where it just weeds out a lot of the bad brokers. And, maybe some of that is through the implementation of technology where you're able to do more with that same person. You're able to be more efficient, do things a little tighter. I think there's like an argument for that just by looking at everything that's happened last year. Granted, there's like a surplus of capacity still out in the market. More, all the MC numbers that entered the space during COVID, many are still here, but I think that's an encouraging like signal for our industry. And that it's, the highs aren't as, the lows aren't as low as what they've been.
It is. I think technology was pushed by VCs, of course, but digital freight matching and
Yeah.
these brokerages, it kind of forced everybody to look and improve their tech stack, and then all the VC money poured in, and you got some really great tools to go out and operate, and you can do more with less.
Yeah. So Casey, I think that's how you do it. The $1 million to $1 billion brokerage culture, for sure. I love that point you made.
Yeah.
Great technology.
Right. It's like, is AI going to get rid of everybody's job? I mean, I've been thinking about that. What makes the great broker? Is there a world where there can be a digital freight matching company? There's always going to be some humans representing that company. Like, how do we make people's lives easier, make the most out of them? Like, that's what the technology that I see, being adopted, that I see, folks being most excited about. It's those things that make people's lives easier. Time is money, right? And how much time are your employees spending on, mundane tasks that are below their education level, right? Like, it's just stuff that like has to be done to keep the business moving. But I think to your point, like I personally have never been more bullish on people and their application in the industry. It's just becoming easier and easier for them to, help folks out.
Yeah, I love that.
Anywho.
Cool. Well, guys, this was fun.
Yeah, it was a blast. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Sorry for the noise and dropping out. For some reason, I can't get online at all right now, at 1 o'clock. Right when I'm going on. It seems
no worries.
But I had a good time. It was great conversation. Great to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too, Kevin. I feel like we've kind of two ships passing in the night. But
yeah, we know a lot of the same people and
yeah,
work with a lot of the same people. So yeah.
Yeah. And Casey, what you're doing is wonderful. I'm so excited for your future, where you're going to take this.
I don't know. I don't know, Liz, but I appreciate it. I guess I can kind of identify with you a little bit in that, I don't know. I've been hearing about the problems in this space for so damn long. Like, I don't know. Learned a
Yeah.
lot about them. I don't know. What am I going to do about it? Not entirely sure, but hopefully something impactful. So I appreciate it. But
Yeah.
anywho, do we still have time for a tour of ZBOX?
Oh yeah. Do you guys want to do it?
I would love a tour.
Okay. This
See
is a
Kevin.
14,000 square foot. So this is our podcast room right there. That's, I of course have no idea how to work any of the equipment, but we were in there. So with CMA being a French-based company, there's a lot of European influence here. Case in point, we have lockers here that are suitable for motorcycle helmets, you know, so, things like that. But
Cool.
yeah, it's very modern. Oh, actually, your guy John Hess from Fairlanes is here.
Oh, cool.
That's his dog Simba.
Simba.
You see Simba there?
That's
So
awesome.
cool. Yeah, but
John.
this is kind of the facility here. It's a ton of open space. It's very modern. Amazon is right over there. Amazon HQ2. That was one of the motivations to build it here.
Oh yeah, I remember when that all went down.
Mhm.
They were thinking about New York, and then I guess was there always a plan for Virginia?
Well, you know, CMA's U.S. headquarters is in Norfolk, so
Okay.
I think they wanted to stay within Virginia. But
was-
we have the most incredible views. I mean, if you guys are if you fly into DCA, there is no excuse to not visit ZBOX because literally, I don't know if you guys can see that. Like, there's the airport.
Oh my
Can you
god.
see that from there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kinda.
it's very convenient.
Yeah. So we have these great like window seats that you just watch planes all day long. But yeah, it's a great space. We're hosting a bunch of events. It's DC Startup Week this week, so we hosted day 2 of it on Tuesday, and you know, try to use it as much as we can as an event space before we kill ourselves because we're not event planners. But yeah,
Jack of all trades,
yeah, I've gotten pretty good at it. I'm not gonna lie.
but better than a master of one. Often
True.
better than a master of one, I think is the official quote. But anyways, that's very cool. If, any of your founders, this question is just burning a hole in my brain. Any of your founders on mopeds or motorcycles or?
I don't know, not that I'm aware of. I haven't opened up the lockers, but I should, you know, to see what's in there.
Probably a great
But,
way to beat the 495 traffic, or I guess you're probably
Yeah.
not very close. Are you guys? Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of like founders, but also like VC folks, people kind of thinking through their next gig. We welcome everyone. So,
Very cool.
yeah.
Holler at Liz if you're in the audience and you are in town.
There you go.
Awesome out there at ZBOX. But anyways, Liz, thank you for the tour.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the time. This was really fun.
Yeah, likewise. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks.
See you guys. Bye.
Okay.